We're trying to actually show you that this is live. This is without a net. We're just going, right? That's
That's
what we
right.
do.
Leachin would love to edit this out, but no, here we are. We're ready to go.
That's right. All right. Well, we've got folks joining, and we're gonna continue to welcome them in. But let's get started out of respect for everybody's time. My name is Kevin Armstrong. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Summit. We acquired Deft in December of 2023, and welcome to our webinar today, which is Rethink Your All-In Cloud Strategy. It's an amazing time of year. We've got the fall, we've got Halloween around the corner, Thanksgiving coming up, my favorite holiday, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. World Series starts tomorrow night. Go Yankees. A lot going on, but it's also budgeting time of year. It's also when you're rethinking your strategy for the following year. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to meet with us today and talk about an all-in cloud strategy. I've got some amazing folks with me today. I'm very, very fortunate to have Jeff DeVerter. He's a special guest, a member of the Forbes Technology Council, and Aaron Biggs, our own VP of Revenue at Summit. So guys, say a quick hello.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. I'll remind you to use the question and answer feature inside of here because we have time at the end to answer your questions.
Absolutely. Thank you all. I'm excited about talking about our topics today. Great insights to share and one or two dad jokes to boot.
There you go.
Aaron, have yours ready because I'm coming to you next for that. So, well, we have an exciting agenda lined up for you today. First, we'll cover some of why companies are taking that round trip to the cloud. Then we'll dig into some of the reasons behind those shifts. Then we'll let you put your instincts to the test and explore some real world scenarios in a game show style activity. Who knew? You came here and you're going to play a game today. Then we'll talk through some things to look out for if and when you decide to move some of your workloads on-prem. Finally, as Jeff alluded to, we will open it up for Q&A. So we're glad to have you here, and let's jump right on in. As Jeff mentioned, the one thing I will call out is there is a Q&A button right there at the top. We're here for you. We can sit and talk to each other all day. Trust me, put a quarter in and we'll go. It would be much more productive at the end if you will raise your hands, put in some questions, and feel free to ask just about anything you want. And we will answer those live right here. So, right off the top, we're here talking about cloud strategy, and you're going to hear some things about moving workloads from the public cloud back on-prem. You're going to hear about some of these trends in the industry and everything, but I wanted to just share this with you right up front so that you don't think these are things that we're just making up. Right on the top left here, you see a Barclays CIO study from just recently that talks about 83% of enterprises are planning to move workloads back on-premise from the public cloud. You see AWS admitting that the biggest challenge that they face right now are customers packing up their bags and moving back on-prem, right? These are all very real and very much out there. These are not things that we're just positing to create a webinar and create some momentum. So that's what the headlines are saying, and this is what we're hearing. But, Jeff, you want to maybe talk a little bit about why are companies rethinking their public cloud strategy and in some ways pulling back from AWS, Azure, Google Cloud?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thanks, Kevin, for having me here. It's great to be a special guest. Usually I'm just an unwelcome guest, but today I'm a special guest. So, I've been helping with cloud transformations since, when did I start? About 2008. And that's taken a lot of different forms, whether it was helping companies move into managed hosting, then the cloud stuff came along and everybody got super excited about AWS, then Azure, and of course, Google in that mix as well. And you saw a lot of companies really starting to pivot and moving sometimes specific workloads in, sometimes they were kind of all in. You had a lot of companies, the startups of the day that started there. And so they grew up inside of the cloud. And then 2020 shows up and we all know what happened in 2020. Everyone goes home except the people who worked in the data center. And so IT leaders really had to think about ways to get their data into an environment, into a location where their employees could manage work, get the things done that they needed to do. And so what you saw was this massive hype cycle that happened in the teens. You saw out of necessity, people, my favorite expression is just snow shoveling their data and their applications into their cloud of choice. And now we're having a moment of reckoning, and you see it in some of the news articles here. That moment of reckoning where people are saying, hey, maybe one size fits all isn't a good thing. You know, I don't know if you've ever shopped for clothes and gone to the one size fits all section. You may not be very happy with the results. And so when we think about the things that they think about why that might not work in their computing infrastructure, well, it would be reasons like, well, if we have certain specific workloads, they can tend to run more expensive in the public cloud. Think about your steady state applications, high compute environments, or if they're maybe not necessarily don't have the best relationship with their cloud provider, their purchasing mechanisms might be a little bit off. And then lastly, they may have certain challenges that they're dealing with geographic issues, they're dealing with regulatory issues, all sorts of reasons. But what's happening is, I'll call it a return to common sense, because the cloud isn't a panacea. The cloud doesn't make things perfect. It's an amazing tool. And for what it does it quite amazing and perfect. I don't want to say perfect, but it does it great. But it's not a one size fits all scenario. So people are looking and making the right decision, not even division by division, but application by application. And where we're finding ourselves and where I think we're going to exist for the foreseeable future is a hybrid world, a world where applications run where they run best, technically, economically, geographically, fill in any of the leads. And ultimately, they're making these tech decisions in ways that benefit the organization, not based on dogma.
Yeah, and let's stay on this for one moment. Hybrid is not new, right? Most of what we're talking about here is the trends are cyclical. And I was very much a part of the generation that was not even spoon feeding. We were shoveling the public cloud down our buyers' throats because I ran 5 or 6 of the largest Microsoft partners here in the Americas, and my peers at Microsoft were compensated via Azure cloud consumption, right?
Yeah.
So our buyers would have an EA. They would tack on their cloud consumption onto their EA. They would commit to $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a month worth of spend. Some of them. Then they would get in and they would start launching their programs. They would realize their usage was at 300,000, 400,000, and then they'd have to make up some of that with microservices and try to, because they had committed to it, right?
Yeah.
That was the right decision at the time, and we'll talk about that more as we go. Right. So it's not about right or wrong. You made the right decision at the time. There was a good point there to enter in, and there are some workloads that belong there. But even the hyperscalers are saying, you know what, we drove you hard and heavy in this direction, but we have to rethink this because performance is important. As you start getting towards AI workloads, GPUs are expensive. There's a lot of things to consider. So the important thing that we're trying to point out right here to those of you who are listening is not that there's a right or a wrong. Everybody, including the hyperscalers, admit that there has to be a right sizing of where these workloads go and where they belong, right? So let's talk about a little bit of an example. So, Aaron, most of us have already heard some examples, some real world examples of companies moving to that, from an all-in public cloud approach to a hybrid approach. I mean, we've got many examples, and you're going to highlight one right here. Not everybody can expect the same results that you're going to talk about right here, but talk to us about what workloads are better suited for a hybrid rather than a hybrid or private approach rather than a strictly all-in public cloud approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think the best thing to walk away with is understanding that it's not about public or private. It's not about hybrid, which, as you rightly said, has been around for quite some time. It's about common sense, right? I mean, if we want to talk about it, it's common sense cloud computing. And the reality is that for Basecamp, right? So our friends at 37 Signals who develop Basecamp and Hey, they have been on the same journey that many companies in the world have. They started with their own metal in a data center. The world of public cloud came out, and they were able to take advantage of it. They were able to move to that platform, to feel the rapid development cycles and the ability to leverage many different services. But what they found along that journey was that while that's exciting and you have all of that at your fingertips, even with a mature company with a internal DevOps and SRE team to manage those resources, they weren't actually seeing and reaping the benefits of the cost equation, right? The technology was very cool, but the financials of it didn't make sense because they run a mature technology product. It doesn't scale 100x on a daily basis. It doesn't need to be something that has infinite robustness because they have a steady state workload that's running. They have new customers that come in and increases the load on the compute, but it doesn't have to scale exponentially. And so when you take that out of the equation, what we identify is those kind of stable workloads. Doesn't matter if it's sitting in a legacy or a modern application. If it's steady state, it may not be best suited in terms of cost efficiency to live in the public cloud. And the splashy numbers on the page here tell you the story that by migrating those workloads back out of public cloud, in this case, AWS and Google Cloud, they're able to see originally a $7 million savings over 5 years. And now that number, after they migrated their storage platform, has grown and increased to over $2 million of savings per year. And that's largely due to exactly what we just talked about. And then also the fact that they had petabytes of data stored in Amazon S3. And that data, which was being heavily traversed and ingressing and egressing out of the platform, right? So that motion, the motion of data is what costs money in the cloud, right? Not necessarily storing it. The public cloud vendors are very generous in terms of allowing you to load as much data as you want and trying to create a low cost structure for storing it. But as soon as you start utilizing it and moving it around, you're going to see those big bills start to come in. And that migration is what led them down this path to address it with effectively a repatriation of that workload back out of the public cloud into bare metal that they manage and are supported on in the data center. And that's the story. The moral here is not everything should be in the public cloud, even if it can be, and that there's benefit to be gained across the spectrum, right? Common sense cloud. That's the answer.
And before we jump into a game, one thing I would say here that I congratulate the executives at Basecamp is they made this decision. They made the decision to go to the public cloud. They recognized that they had gotten upside down on it, and they removed all of the emotion from the prior decision they made, and they said, we have to put our data in the right place. We have to do the right things financially for our company. So don't have any concerns about decisions that were made and when. Just always make the right decision you can moving forward. And with better information and better technology and better understanding of your own data and your own workloads, you can make different decisions, right? So I commend those executives for having the foresight and the visionary leadership to be able to say, hey, we can do this different. Right?
And being very transparent about it, right? They've shared that message, given a considerable amount of detail about all of the process and steps and hurdles that were faced, and down to the line item, what the benefits and the costs really were and now are for them to go operate their business. So if anybody needs the cliff notes on what that journey can look like, not only do we have it to share with you, but they have it on their site, and it's freely available.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to do something a little bit different for a webinar. We're going to actually play a little bit of a game. It's game time. So let's play Right Choice or Rethink. That's my best game show host voice. I don't do it very well, so I'm not going to enter into
Chuck.
that. Yeah, Chuck Woolery. It's a game where it's your job to figure out where things went wrong, if they even did. In each scenario, you'll decide if the technology and the execution were spot on, a little off the mark, or didn't age well. So let's test those IT instincts. Scenario 1. A company introduces an AI chatbot to help its customers find support documents. They start with cloud GPUs. Since the pay-as-you-go model allows them to experiment without major investments, initially, adoption is low. But as customers use it more and more, cloud GPU costs are skyrocketing. So, Jeff, what do you think? Was this right tech, wrong execution, wrong tech, right execution, or right tech then, wrong tech now?
So well, first of all, I think that picture.
Yeah, let's
awesome.
let everybody else weigh in on this. Hey, that's right. It's a game show. That's my fault. That's terrible game show host. Everybody vote on this right now and tell us what you think the answer is to this scenario.
And I'll pontificate for just a moment while you guys answer. So, and I love the way that we put these questions up, the answer. So, right tech, wrong execution, wrong tech, right execution. This is the common conundrum that we might have if we think about, hey, did we do it right or did we do it wrong? But what's beautiful about the way this has been phrased is there's the last one, and that's right tech then, wrong tech now. Because what this does is it opens the window, and it hopefully is instilling the fact that just because we made a decision yesterday, last week, last month, last year, last decade, it doesn't mean it's still the right decision now. Hey, those bare metal 486 machines were awesome back in 2005. We really should rethink that if we're now heading into 2025. So in this scenario, Have we given folks enough time? I'm going to say yes. I don't see those poll answers, but I'll bet they're there.
Yeah,
I would say
let's pull in the answers, team, and let's see where we are.
let's see what they say before I give my answer here. I don't know how we see the answers, but I bet the team knows how.
We've got smart people.
Yes,
We do.
Polls on the top there. Most people are saying right tech then, wrong tech now.
Oh, and that's why I hang out with this crew over here at Summit and Deft, and that's because your audience is brilliant. That is my answer. Right tech then, wrong tech now. You've got to rethink these things over time. Just because it was right in one way doesn't mean it's going to be right for the long haul or for tomorrow. So always have it open. In fact, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to sort of answer a question that Corey asked me in the Q&A. And he says, from a consultative selling approach, in my experience, what works best in approaching a decision maker that engages and opens doors to new and existing customers when thinking about repatriation? Well, that's the easiest answer, is just to think about this. And that is, hey, tell me about some of those decisions. How are they aging? How are they wearing on? Let's think about what's working well. You can, of course, always bring in how you liking those cloud bills. That's always a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, we appreciate Corey and Martin. We see your question out there as well. We're going to come back to yours. Hopefully we answer some of these questions, but I'm going to table that one until the end. But keep them coming, folks. Really appreciate you engaging and giving us something to talk about at the end. Otherwise, Jeff is going to tell you more dad jokes. Let's move on to scenario number 2, the one with the nationwide outage. Sounds like a Friends episode. I love that. In this scenario, a cloud architect deploys resources across multiple availability zones within a single region of the East Coast for redundancy. Months later, an unexpected outage affected all users nationwide, bringing the entire system down. So what do you think? Right tech, wrong execution? Wrong tech, right execution? Or right tech then, wrong tech now? Let's see how everybody's weighing in.
Yeah.
All right, we've got several responses, and they're still coming in.
Yeah, well, one thing. Let's talk about this for a second. One thing about tech outages is you can almost just even take the question off of it and just say tech outages. They are a reality. It is a scenario, and so in architecting solutions, you have to plan for these things. Right. Because it's the best laid plans, the smartest people. I've worked with some of the most brilliant engineers in the world, and things still happen. So it's your responsibility as folks either architecting or helping them with teams to architect to plan for the most likely scenarios and dealing with what those impacts might be.
Absolutely. All right, we've got our responses. The bulk of our audience believes that it's right tech, wrong execution. Aaron, you want to weigh in on this a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm gonna agree with the audience. I think obviously as Jeff was highlighting, this is a trend, and it's almost platform agnostic. Disaster recovery and dealing with those challenges is core to the business of infrastructure, right? Every team dreads the day where there's an outage. It is a known risk, and it's a real risk that does happen. So it's more about what is your plan to deal with that. And in this particular scenario, the cloud architect did a great job. They deployed across multiple availability zones. So they were thinking about it. They were identifying that there's an opportunity for this to go down, and we should risk mitigate that. But what they failed at was that they didn't potentially bring in the right resources or outside assistance to shape that strategy and to help them identify it's not just about availability zones. As we all have seen in the news, you can have a full region outage in the public cloud. And when that occurs, guess what? Doesn't matter how many availability zones you're sitting in, that's all down for you. And so they chose the right technology. This is not a point in time where you say, let's re-platform because we had an outage. You go back to what caused that outage and how do we address that failure point in our design? How do we set ourselves up for more resiliency and better availability moving forward? And again, whether it's internally or externally, bring the right people to the table to plan for those scenarios. They're all well understood. The world of technology outage has not changed in the last 10 years. It's the same failure points. It's just on a different platform. So right technology, they're using it correctly. They don't need to migrate off of the platform they're on, but they do need to build some better plans and to have the right mitigating resources or planning in place to deal with those scenarios when they do happen.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Great answer. Let's move on to our next episode, our next scenario, scenario 3 here. The one with the ghost instances haunting finance. So, an entertainment company hosted a global live streamed event on AWS. It was the obvious choice for unpredictable spikes in traffic. But after the event ended, the finance team was furious. The cloud instances were left running and at full capacity for hours after the audiences dropped off, which meant they were still being charged. So, Jeff, what do you think? Right tech, wrong execution? Wrong tech, right execution? Or right tech then, wrong tech now? Let's let everybody
All
weigh
right,
in.
let's let some folks weigh in here a little bit. By the way, a couple less of you voted on the last one as opposed to the first one. There are about 40 some of you out here, almost 50. Let's see if we can get full audience participation. What do you think here? So, a media company using AWS. Who knew? This is a very common use case for something in the cloud, and I'd applaud the engineering team that chose public cloud. In fact, even an AWS environment that could be spread in a global fashion and used throughout. And so when we think about tech decisions, this is a solid tech decision. When I would think about architecting for this, it's a point in time solution. So it's not like we're saying, hey, we're going to build the next finance a back end for a banking system. This is a system that's going to be on forever. It's going to be relatively consistent in its use case, and we're looking for economies of scale based on how much it costs to run this thing. But when we think about this point in time solution, perfect scenario for using a cloud-based solution in AWS in this scenario. So I'd have to applaud that decision, but unfortunately, even whether it was a missed requirement, whether it was a poor implementation of the requirements, those machines weren't turned off. We weren't using auto scaling to make changes inside of there. So right tech for me, wrong execution. Most of you, 86% of you, went with that one. So that's how I'd vote on that one.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's a great example of where nobody's saying that the public cloud is the wrong place to be, right? In many instances, it's the right place to be, right? It just has to be managed properly, right? And actually, speaking of managing properly, I will note Bill Beards in the comments, it's not so much a question, but a statement. He talked about what makes companies think they're better able to manage workloads than the public or private cloud providers. It's a good point, Bill. I mean, that's kind of what we're saying is you don't have to take this journey alone, and we'll talk more about that at the end. So thank you for weighing in on that. All we want to do is provide some guidance on that journey. So I think we would agree with you on that. Scenario number 4, the one with the $1 million downloads. A video production company stores terabytes of video footage in the cloud. During a global project collaboration, they needed to download large portions of the video footage to their laptops for editing. Their cloud bill was 10x what they were expecting. Aaron, what do you think? Right tech, wrong execution, wrong tech, right execution, or right tech then, wrong tech now?
There you go. Kevin's nailing it now, guys, right?
I'm in the zone.
Every one of these questions, we've gotten the percentage a little bit better from the audience out here, so I'm expecting perfection from you now. While I kill a second here, I'm going to tell you a dad joke. Why did the cloud break up with the server? Felt like their relationship was just too cloudy. It's tough when there's no audible audience, let me tell you.
I could almost hear them groan through the interwebs.
I am not afraid of you leaving us to go join the stand-up circuit.
We got plenty more time I can kill with that. I think the votes are largely in. I would tell you that in this scenario, it's a great example of. I would tell you personally that it's a little bit of a trick question. I think you can solve this a couple ways. So the simple answer is right tech then, wrong tech now. They've changed their use case, and they should evolve the technology to meet that use case. And so if it was originally a solution where they were looking for archival data storage, they should benefit from having the low cost of storage in the public cloud like we talked about before. But if they are now looking to access it and use it in a rapid access manner, or they need more of their end users doing so, that use case has changed. And so it may benefit from being, in a hybrid or on-prem solution. The other way to look at this equation, and it looks like the audience here agrees with us, is that it could also be answer B, the wrong technology and the right execution, right? And so they had the right idea, but the general approach here is to leverage the easy button, which is the public cloud's data repository, and really think about there are levers that you can do to solve this problem that aren't just within that domain. So I think, like many of these equations, and I think it's a great example for everyone, there isn't a one size answer. There isn't one direction that is the exact, direct, and appropriate response to any of these. And that's why we want, when we're engaging with a customer, when we're working with a partner, we want everyone to understand, here are the variables. Here's what we're solving for. And here's what we're trying to optimize for as an outcome and deliver what they're trying to accomplish. And you have to understand who they are and what those underlying needs are. And that's the value that we bring to the conversation, whether you're a provider like Summit or you're a partner or an end customer yourself. That's what we want the business to be talking about. What's the pain point and how do we solve it in the right way for your business?
Aaron, just to jump in on that, we're taking a very simplistic view to this because it makes it more fun, and we're trying to get through several of these things. Obviously, we would ask a whole lot more questions, especially in this scenario, because it really may change how we would answer it. But this is intended to also help you guys start to think about how you would either make these decisions for your own company, or if you're in the consultative space, how you might lead folks through those areas. Because if we had added just a few extra words to this, like, this was a one-time project and was time sensitive. You know what? If we put those words into there, they were golden. They would have probably already also known the expense that they were about to undertake, but it enabled them to finish it. So asking questions is so important.
Absolutely. All great points, guys. Let's get to the last scenario in our game show. Scenario number 5, the one where no one hit delete. A mid-sized SaaS company regularly spins up cloud instances for testing and development. Over time, developers forget to shut down certain instances, databases, and other cloud resources, resulting in orphaned resources that are not actively being used, but continue to accumulate costs month after month. The finance team notices a massive cloud expense without corresponding business value. So, Jeff, in our last scenario, what do you think? Right tech, wrong execution, wrong tech, right execution, or right tech then, wrong tech now?
Oh, we really must have been digging deep to make things up, because this scenario has never happened in the world / happened to every company anytime. And I've talked to so many companies who have been in literally this situation, and it exposes really a primary issue. And that is, a lot of companies, when they're thinking about moving to the cloud or even undertake that as an effort, they don't go to the next step of thinking through, how do I change the way we operate, how we do what we do in the cloud? Because when they were on-prem, developer sends in the Jira ticket or the ServiceNow ticket and says, give me a server, and the IT gives them a server. Well, they probably just did the same thing. And nobody really thought through the fact that, hey, this is a dynamic world. We actually don't have committed resources. We haven't gone and bought a bunch of Dell or HP servers that are sitting in our data center. These are in the ether. We can turn them off. We don't have to be charged for them. So this is really an operations challenge, and exemplifies what we find in so many areas of companies that move to the cloud. So for me, as folks are answering this question, let's go see how many have answered. I'm going to pop over there. Yeah, right tech, wrong execution. 88% of you are brilliant. The other ones obviously have thought about this scenario in another way. But I think that if you were to think that this was the wrong tech, we don't. First of all, there's not enough information to really make that decision. Again, I'm going to go back to where I made the comment with Aaron before. There's a million other questions. So a lot of these are sort of trick in that regard, but it gives us the opportunity to share what are some of the other things you might want to ask. With the limited amount we knew they're all in the cloud. We knew they wanted those servers for the developers, because developers need development environments, but there's a better way to operationalize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for playing our game show. Thank you for everybody who was answering. We really appreciate you weighing in and taking part. So when I listened to the responses that you both gave, it really talks about how navigating these waters can be challenging at times. You can make a decision that you feel is right, and it can turn out to cause you challenges. You can do the thing, everything with the best of intentions. You got all this power at your fingertips, right? We've got all this power and capability right there. So Jeff, how do you wield all that power?
Yeah, when I mentioned I got into helping folks move out of their data centers back around 2008, and specifically I was helping companies with SharePoint. And if you think about what SharePoint has become, but really where it was in the first stage of its existence, a server-based app that ran in data centers, um, that tool, they threw more capabilities at that thing, and I stood in front of so many people day in and day out, and I always say the same phrase: just because you can use this tool to do this thing, it doesn't mean you should. You've got to have a wider view of things, and the cloud is no different. Just because that fancy Swiss Army knife on your screen shows almost every tool that you could use to build a house, it doesn't mean you should use a Swiss Army knife to build a house. Just because there's one thing that does seemingly everything, it doesn't mean it's best for every single job holistically, because there are targeted tools and targeted environments that can serve better. Again, it goes back to this theme today, and that is asking questions. And so when you're thinking about how to wield the cloud and what place it takes, remember this image of the Swiss Army knife that has every tool known to mankind inside of it. The cloud is very similar. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Think about those reasons of why you want to utilize a specific tool, and then justify it based on requirements, based on your business, based on your geography, based on the amount of compute that you might need. But really stop back and think about it. Now, just because you've made a decision in the past doesn't mean you can't go back and change that in light of new information or new tooling. And that really gets us back to this whole repatriation, this evolving of the hybrid landscape that we're seeing happening so many places these days. And it's because people are going and looking at those all-in decisions, the Swiss Army knife decision. And they're saying, you know what, for this specific tooling, it makes much more sense to run it in our data center, run in a colo data center on fixed infrastructure.
I feel like this thing actually exists somewhere, don't you?
I think it does. I really want to buy one, but I'm sure I can't afford
Very
it.
concerned about going to the airport with it, let me tell you.
Hey, but they'll ship it back to your house. No problem.
For the low price.
Yeah. All right. Well, so where do we go from here, right? And we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges. We've noted some of the elements. We'll get into a little bit more. We can answer some of the questions. Aaron, as companies realize that the all-in cloud approach, specifically their public cloud approach, because so many companies move so many of their workloads there and have seen some challenges in terms of outages and cost overruns and all sorts of different things. As soon as they start to realize that they may be a little sideways or may need to readjust their strategy, what steps do they need to take in order to identify the workloads and really work towards what might potentially be a hybrid environment?
Yeah, I think it's important too that we recognize that in industries and businesses, no matter the segment or the scale of their business, we get caught up in the trends, right? So we got caught up in the virtualization migration. We got caught up in the cloud first, public cloud always mindset. And this is not about we need to move everybody rapidly off of the public cloud. And so what starts with that beginning footprint is just think about what you have sitting in your infrastructure and understand, what are you trying to solve for? And Jeff called it out before, right? It doesn't have to be at the business level. It's not, let's move this entire company out of public cloud or onto public cloud. It's look at the division, look at the application, look at the individual workload within that application and understand where should it live and why. And once you start to go down that's where you start to arrive at these next steps on the journey. So step one is just thinking about it. Or in the case that it's a partner or someone trying to spark that conversation internally, it's posing that question. It's creating that thought within your business. Step two is exactly what we were just talking about. It's now that you know that there might be opportunity to optimize or change or the dreaded word, modernize or transform, then you have an opportunity to understand where could that workload go. And the only way to approach this is to build the right plan around it. And that right plan is something that has to be delivered and supported by both the internal teams that know those workloads, know those applications, understand the skeletons in the closet for each of them, and potentially that outside party, right? Leverage the expertise of a business that does this day in and day out. You don't want your internal IT team, whose expertise should be focused on your business and its idiosyncrasies, to be the ones who are trying to identify for themselves what's the best practice way to make this change or to make this adjustment or optimization. Take advantage of the firms and the businesses out there who specialize in that and can bring that expertise to the table. It also allows your team to stay focused on delivering for your business despite this change going on within your ecosystem. And then finally, right, obviously we want to have a successful migration. And at the end of that, the outcome should be, whether it's in or out of the cloud, sitting in some hybrid footing, you've got a lower bill, you've generally got higher performance. We see increased workload optimization and net benefit both for the business itself and for whatever its end customers are. And I would leave you with kind of the final thought that modernizing whatever it is that you're doing in any way doesn't mean migration, and it can be solved in so many different ways. And that's the big lens that we want people to look at. Is cloud repatriation is a way, and hybrid computing is a way, and together we can find which pathways and which roads will lead us down the optimum path for whatever your business tends to be.
I think the important thing that you're saying here, Aaron, is you got to have a plan, and you got to, and in most cases, it helps to uh, have somebody to help go on that journey with you and provide some guidance and some thought. Jeff, I know, I mean, to our audience, we have a gifted team that can help you answer some of these questions. There's no cost to talking to us about how we can help you with your journey, and we have no axe to grind with the public cloud. I mean, I know this is an election year and we think that everybody's polar opposites. We are squarely down the middle on cloud and where it belongs. We want workloads to go. Some things are meant to be public, some things are meant to be private. That's how we're going to approach it. So we're not going to pressure you to go any which way. And the one thing I will tell you about our team is we're going to tell you if we're not a fit, if our services are not a fit to help you, we're going to tell you somebody who can help you. And I'm going to point to you, Jeff, and say your team has we're thankful to be able to have somebody of your expertise and your industry knowledge with us today, talking to our attendees. But you've built workshops that can help companies. Sometimes the problem is you can't get out of your own way to have the right dialogue across your executive team, or you're in the trenches from an IT perspective and the voice isn't being heard. How do you get the message out? And do you want to talk just very briefly about the workshops that you've created, and we can obviously connect people to you?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And it really is. I'm honored to be here with you guys today. So I work over at a company called Pythian, and really where we're helping companies and I'm a field CTO over there, and I'm out having conversations on a weekly basis with companies through these workshops, and they come in half-day, week-long, 2-week-long events, really focused in two primary areas. The first is around general technology trends. I mean, before you can start to make a decision, you have to know what the whole landscape is. If you're going to drive from point A to point B, in the old days when we had paper maps, you needed to understand the lay of the land before you would make that decision. And so before making any decision, in fact, I find so many CIOs, CTOs who will come to us, their heads are down, they are keeping the lights on, they are running the battleship. And they need somebody to come in and help provide that perspective of what's happening in technology, what decision bets can I make today that are going to set me on course for as long as possible that they'll hold out. Now, we also do that not just around tech trends, but around helping companies adopt AI, that little thing that is infecting everything called AI. And then we get into workshops for how do we move from those week-long workshops from a half-day perspective on what's happening in the market to how do we start to look at that in a strategic roadmap point of view and start to turn that into budgeting tool sets, into return on investment calculation, so that you can go into these budgeting cycles that we're all knee-deep in right now and have that for creating the plans for 25 and beyond. So we're happy to help with those at any time. And thank you for offering to connect the dots.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Look, the important thing is this. You come to a lot of webinars, you've given your time, and we appreciate that. The reality of it is we're trying to have an open and honest dialogue here to say we understand there are real challenges out there. We feel that we can help. We have perspective. We have expertise that can help, as does Jeff. And that's what we really want to make available to you. So that said, with all of this incredible content. We've talked about a lot of things. I'm going to go back to a question that was posed a little bit earlier. While, if you have additional questions, please feel free to ask them. But Martin asked earlier, you've touched on some of the items, but can you summarize? And Jeff, I'm going to go to you with this one. Just summarize we've talked about some of these topics, but what are the good reasons and especially bad reasons to move or stay in the public cloud? Specifically that point, like what, if I'm looking at it and I have to say, what is the tipping point that tells me, am I good or am I not with the public cloud?
Well, I'm going to first say that your gut is always a great place to start. Your gut knows, if you've been in IT for any amount of time, am I paying too much for the services that I'm getting? You know what that means if you're staying in a hotel. You know what it means if you're on an airplane. You know what it means if you're buying a car. Your gut will tell you. Now, there are other ways to think about that as well. But what I might kind of, Martin, kind of challenge you with a little here as well is you're asking the question, what are good reasons or bad reasons to stay or leave the public cloud? What I would also do is take that step back and say, at what points in your schedule throughout the year are you reevaluating the decisions that have been made? Now, I can list off a handful of things that you want to think about. You want to think about the price. You want to think about the capabilities that are there. Think about that phrase I used earlier, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because if your computing needs, and I'm not disparaging them in any way, are steady state, rock solid. I have an inventory app. The CPU never fluctuates. The amount of storage goes up incrementally, and it's running an off-the-shelf product, and it's going to do that for the next decade. The public cloud is not the place for you. But if you're, again, to go back maybe our answer before around streaming, if you've got a thing that's going to exist at high consumption for a little while and then it's going to go away, marketing world, it's going to be a great place for public cloud. So really, just as a leader inside of your organization, think about where your applications are running, not where your organization is, not where your division is. Think about the applications themselves. Where are they running, and are you getting everything that you need out of them? So finance is a big thing. Capability is another checkbox you want to think about. And then you also want to think about geography or geographic regulatory reasons. That's another big one as well. And then the last that I would put out there is the application that's actually running there. Is it one that's going to be around for a good long while? Or is it one that you're just trying to ride out? It's on hospice and it needs another year to run somewhere. I would not spend any time outside of keeping it alive in that environment. So I think that's what I would challenge you to do is one, have scheduled time to look at those applications, challenge that. And then here's my last bit of advice. And that is, go to Claude.ai or ChatGPT and type in, give me the 5 common reasons why a company would leave the public cloud. It's going to give you all the answers that you need.
Appreciate that, Jeff. And I think this comes back to, Bill just asked a question that goes back to something you were talking about earlier, Aaron, which is how much do egress costs impact public cloud decisions? Does it outweigh the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important consideration. And I think what I would say, obviously, the details matter to really fully answer that. But largely understand that if you're trying to have a hybrid footing and you're egressing data from the public cloud all day long, that's how you outweigh the benefit. If you put yourself in a footing where you're still reliant upon a service in the public cloud and it's going to run that bill up, it's going to hurt your ability to reap the benefits of pulling that out. But that's another consideration for why is it there and should it be landed somewhere else? And those are the aspects of that plan that we're talking about. You don't want to just solve for moving your compute and not your storage and not understand how they relate to one another. And so you have to have that comprehensive, holistic perspective. We see in our evaluations of companies and their footprints, many times where the egress costs are a huge factor in why they would or wouldn't want to make a change to a particular workload. And oftentimes it's one of the most unknown or unrecognized costs that they're bearing inside of the public cloud unknowingly, because it's not lumped together as part of a application or a workload. It's a separate part of the bill for storage costs or network costs. And a lot of teams struggle to pull that together. And so that analysis, that understanding is key to being able to highlight what those benefits are.
Yeah, we're at the end of time, but I do have one rapid fire one for you, Aaron, that came in earlier, which I think is important. Says our AWS contract is up early next year, but we keep hearing that there are data center space and power limitations out there. How would I navigate that?
I mean, the easy answer is talk to the people who are the experts in the space, right? Selfishly, that's companies like Summit and others who have the view and the perspective. Because what I would tell you is that we're landing customers in data center and solving these problems for them every day across the world. And that capability and capacity is out there. And unless you're a multi-billion-dollar AI company, I'm pretty sure we can find you what what space and power you need to solve your problem.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And while we're coming up to the last slide here, and I'm going to say a quick goodbye, my two friends here have thrown a dad joke out there, so I'm going to have to throw one out because I don't want to be ragged on later for not doing it. So, so has anybody seen the cybersecurity team? No, all I know is they ran somewhere. Thank you. I'm also not quitting my day job. Thank you so much to all of you who have joined us, listened to our bad jokes. Promise you none of us are going on tour for that. Obviously, there's been a lot of questions around optimizing workloads, around, there's a lot of other questions that would come up around microservices, around, power, space, all sorts of other things that would come up in this conversation. I would encourage you to reach out, have a one-on-one consult. We can do we would love to be able to be there for you to help you on this journey and to be able to provide our expertise. We really enjoy this stuff. We know this is a hot topic for many of you. Thank you so much for giving of your time. Thank you. Your time is the one thing that you don't have, enough of. So please feel free to contact us. Don't be a stranger. You'll see more content coming out. Please join us the next time. Jeff, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us, and everybody have a great day.
Yeah, thank you all.